Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to ZTV Live. Today's Tuesday, July 13th. I'm Susan Mulligan Fleischman. I'm so pleased to have everybody here tonight. Tonight is one of our favorite shows. It's Reading, Writing, and Ralph with our literary editor, Ralph Peluso. Hey, Ralph, welcome back to ZTV Live.
Hi, Susan. How are you doing today?
We are doing just fine. How are you doing?
Great. That's a fabulous plant back there.
I tell
Wow.
it really brings the room together, I gotta say.
It sure does. It's been a heck of a day, and none of it involved me playing golf.
Which
Um,
is not a good
uh,
thing. You need to be playing golf more often.
Almost every day.
Yeah.
And trivia returned to the community, and there was over 250 people playing trivia at the clubhouse, and it's just wild. And it's good to see all the people back. And
Terrific.
it's just a wonderful day, and glad to be back on air. And tonight's guest wrote a very compelling book about his experiences, or the experiences in Vietnam of a U.S. Marine Corps photo intelligence operation, and it's got trials, tribulations, comedies, and some heart wrenching stuff.
Mm.
And so let's bring Peter Smith on.
Okay, let's bring him on. Hello, Peter Smith. Welcome to ZTV.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Peter.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to let you guys take it away.
Great, great. How are you doing today, Peter?
I am doing fine, Ralph. In your introduction, I think we should mention it's a novel, not a nonfiction book.
No, yeah, yes, it is. It is. I guess it's classified as a historical fiction, where
Yeah,
you kind of
that's a good
take
thing. Yeah.
and that's what my book was based on. 512. It's a retelling of the life and times of Babe Ruth, most of which is based in fact, and most of which isn't. But it makes for great reading, and I'm sure there's a lot of um, real stuff in your book that took place, and some's dramatized for good reading by the audience. But I'd like to get our viewers to know a little bit about you. So tell us about your background, what you've done for your career, and then how you ended up writing.
Okay. I was in the Marine Corps, but that was a very short stint for 2 years in the mid '60s, and then after that, I went to law school and I practiced law with some software companies in New York City for several years. And then I decided to retire and move to Connecticut. But after a few years there, I decided to go back to work. And I got a job with the Department of State doing some contractual work. It's called procurement analysis. And I did that for about 7 to 9 years. And all during that time, I had been thinking about publishing the book, and I eventually did.
Yeah, it's a great story. So during your stint in the military, in the Marines, did you spend time in Vietnam?
Oh, yes, I spent a full year there in beginning of 1967 and ended just after the Tet Offensive of 1968, the famous Tet Offensive. Yeah.
I remember it well. I was still not of age to join the military. I was still in high school at that point in time, and but certainly remember it well. And one of the things um, that always struck me about the Vietnam War that I cannot come to grips with or get my head around is why there was so much negativity directed towards our returning warriors from that war. Can you help me understand that a bit and help the viewers understand that a little bit?
Yes, and you're absolutely right. I think that people thought this was a very unpopular war. The people who watched Walter Cronkite on TV. He uh, he turned against the war sometime in the '60s, and when he turned against the war, President Johnson, who was then in office, said, "If I lose Walter Cronkite, I've lost the war." And because of that, I think people said this is a losing proposition. We have to get out of there. And anybody who was assigned over there in the military, when they came back, they weren't getting the parades. They weren't getting the accolations. They weren't, it's just, it was, why were you there? And some people, they had chants, especially the people who got the deferments, the college kids who were saying, and I said, Lyndon Johnson was an officer at the time, but they had a chant at that time saying, hey, hey, LBJ, how many kids did you kill today?
I
And
remember it.
that that was a perspective that a lot of Americans had on the war. Plus, the drug problem began to develop in Vietnam, and a lot of these guys got stoned, and they didn't want to be there, and I think that people saw this war as kind of a proxy for the Cold War, and it just wasn't working out. Very unpopular.
Yeah, how much did the media's um, promotion of all of the atrocities that took place? There's atrocities in war, but this may have been the first time that we saw a lot of those live, or maybe within a 24-hour news cycle. How much, excuse me, did that play into this?
Well, there was the famous My Lai massacre, which was carried out by an army unit in the north of South Vietnam, where these rogue junior officers t- ordered their troops to line up all these poor villagers, including kids, and just massacre them. And it was in the hundreds. And that didn't get out for quite a while. But then with investigative reporting, it finally got out, and people said, this is America. We don't do those types of things. But they did do them. And My Lai is the poster boy for these atrocities.
Absolutely. And, you know, one scene in your book, which the aftermath of that scene lingered, was when one of the soldiers of the Marines hit a bicycler on the head, I think, and they left him. They didn't know if he was dead or alive. Um, but it seemed to divide the unit a little bit between, why'd you do this? And the others that said there was no problem found. So, how much of that went on in reality?
Actually, Ralph, that was based upon an incident, a true incident where I was a witness. And it's the way I describe it in the book is almost exactly how it happened. That we were coming back from getting gas in the dark of night, and there was a old Vietnamese man on a bicycle. And as I'm driving by, I hear clunk, and this poor guy, went off the road, and who knows what happened to him. I couldn't believe it at the time because the guy who did it was a friend of mine. I never saw that in him up until that point, and it was frankly, I think, it was an atrocity. But I wasn't going to go back. Um, it was, you stick with your Marines, and we just kept going. But I was very irritated by that incident.
Yeah, I can understand why, because that, just it was out of the blue. It seemed uncalled for, and the residual effect people have emotionally from something like that, it's got to be devastating. I don't. How do you have and carry on the same relationship after that?
Good, it's a good question. Actually, for 1 week, I was on mess duty. And during that week, we had a support staff of all Vietnamese regular citizens, mostly young women, headed by a what we call the honcho woman, who was a little bit older. And I became very friendly with them. And before I left my duty, I went outside with them and had my picture taken and everything. And I liked the people. So they had this saying. They've used it actually in Afghanistan and also in Iraq. It's winning the hearts and minds. Well, you don't win hearts and minds by bumping people on the head with a rifle butt. You do it through civil procedures. And again, I was very disturbed by that whole thing.
No, I agree. Um, we'll continue with that in a second. I want to, at this time, pause and give the audience the first trivia question. So there'll be 3 trivia questions tonight. Type in the comments box the answer. The first person in with the correct answer will receive an autographed copy of Someone's Catching Hell. And the first question is, the Vietnam War has 3 other common names to it. Type in one of the other common names, and you'll win an autographed copy of Peter's book. So other than that, there are other incidents that took place in your book too, and you wonder how much. At least I wondered how much of this actually took place, and could actually also may have been an atrocity. You spoke about blind shootings one night. The people on defending the perimeter, not really shooting at a target. I guess they're just shooting into the village to try to um, uh, uh, do harm or defer any of the Viet Cong from coming forward. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that is an entirely fictional incident.
Okay.
Okay, but just to describe it for your viewers, it's that there were 3 Viet Cong sappers. Now Viet Cong at that time were the enemy. Okay, and in the book, these sappers are going to come up to a corner of the compound that is the center of the book, and they're going to throw these satchel charges over a fence where a bunch of Marines are watching a movie up on a big plywood screen, and a guard sees that and opens fire and disrupts the attack, and the sappers blow themselves up. But everyone is so excited that they're getting attacked that they rush to the wall. That is, all the Marines rushed to the wall in the neighborhood of where this attack was coming, and they just opened up on anything that moved. Well, Marines do that. You know, it is the enemy. They were attacking, and finally someone says, check fire, because this officer realizes there's no more attack. But in the meantime, you know, these guys are the adrenaline's flowing, and they have rifle. Everyone's got a rifle, and they're going to use them. And I wouldn't say so much that was a war crime. It was just that this is what you do when you think you're being attacked.
Well, yes. I mean, I could see that, and but there was also some consternation later on between the characters when they talked about that. Whether, but anyway, we have a winner. That's good. So, Susan, who is the winner tonight on the first question?
We do have a winner, and a very quick one, and it's Butch Crismond gave us the correct answer. First he said Nam, and then he said Vietnam conflict, and I believe that was one of the
That
3 names.
is, congratulations, Butch. Butch is a Marine, Peter, and he's a good friend, and so he can probably relate to a lot of the experiences that you're
Yes.
talking about
Butch,
today.
thank you so much for playing. Congratulations on winning. And please send the Zebra on Facebook a private message with your mailing address, and we can get a signed copy of the book to you. Thank you so much.
Semper Fi, Butch.
There was I'm focused right now on a couple of things that tugged at me, and I'm trying to and I'm going to close with this topic with another emotional kind of thing. But Cecilia was the fiance of one of the characters, I believe, and in the middle of the war, she sends him a Dear John letter. And I think everybody
Yes.
out there in the military knows what a Dear John letter is. And the thought that crossed my mind as the reader of that is, what the heck was she thinking? Because I'd like to know 2 things. What was the character feeling when he gets that in the middle of a Southeast Asia jungle? And 2, what the heck was on her mind to do that to somebody?
Well, you know, that was a very common experience with the troops that were over there.
Right.
The girls back home, let's call them girls because they're all in there, late teens and 20s, and they've been dating these guys, and the guys leave. And this happened, World War II, Korean War, whatever war you want to talk about, and they meet somebody else, and that someone else is attractive and attractive enough that they decide to uh, write the Dear John letter, and that's just the way it happened, and it happened frequently when I was there, and
Wow.
it brings a pall to the barracks at that time because you know that the person who receives the letter is just so depressed, and his hopes of going home and resuming this relationship have just been crushed. Very, very distressing.
How does it affect him, or how did it affect him uh, in the theater? I mean, what did he go through, and how was it felt among his comrades?
It was again the whole barracks that where I was. That happened. I saw it happen a few times. They have sympathy for the guy, but there was this nefarious critter called Jody, Jody, and Jody was that guy back in the States who was trying to date the woman that you left behind. And there were songs about Jody. I mean,
Mm,
he was an existential threat, let's say, to any kind of relationship. And it happened so many times, but it wasn't.
right.
It was not uncommon. So
It was not. So, in staying with this theme of how people felt and what they were going through, so uh, describe uh, what recruits went through when they've left the States, they've been deployed here, and they're stepping into a Camp Horn for the first time. And they don't really think that they're going to see battle. They don't know why they're there. And, and they're 18 years old, and now they're faced with reality of having to pull the trigger maybe on somebody. So
oh
what did they?
well, that was. I went through boot camp at Paris Island, and a lot of my friends back then in the platoon I was in, they went straight from Paris Island to advanced infantry training, and then got their ticket to Vietnam. And that did not happen to me. But those people who went straight to Vietnam usually went in kind of an infantry capacity. So they were going to be the trigger pullers as soon as they stepped on the ground. And they would get assigned to the infantry units, what we call up north. And it was a very precarious situation they were in. They were in danger. Okay. Now, as for me, I got sent to an advanced school of photo interpretation in Baltimore for about 3 months. And then I got shipped to a Marine Corps air station in California for a few months. So I was kind of seasoned before I got there. And and again, I only had 2 years to spend in the Marine Corps. So I spent 1 year stateside and um, 1 year in Vietnam. But I knew what I was going to be doing in Vietnam. I knew I was going to be looking at aerial photographs, trying to find this enemy. And I knew that on Camp Horn itself, there wasn't a lot of danger. There were rocket attacks on the air base nearby every once in a while, and we'd have to hit the bunkers, and that was about it in terms of danger up until maybe the Tet Offensive. But but I had a clear understanding of what my role was and how I was going to actually, help in the war. That is, trying to find enemy positions so that they could be addressed, to put it mildly.
Let's. So now that we got the audience warmed up, we're going to give them the second trivia question. So here goes. Okay, again, same thing. Type in the comment section the answer. First correct answer will get the second copy of Peter's book, Someone's Catching Hell. So why were $10 million of helicopters pushed from the USS Midway into the China Sea? as the war drew to a close. So again, why were $10 million worth of helicopters pushed into the China Sea from the USS Midway as the war in Vietnam was drawing to a close? So Peter, you let's get back to the photo intelligence operation for a second. And that was a very technical detail, and you fill the story with about 6 or 7 characters, and we'll get to them in a minute. But you just said you really didn't think you were going to be in the middle of attack or in a danger zone, but there you were, the Tet Offensive deepened in the middle of a battle. And how did you and how did the characters in this book evolve to feeling? I know it's historical fiction going back, but tell me what went through everybody's mind, because some of the characters had a view of war as something, chivalrous and all of that, but then you got the horrors of being rained on by shells all over the place and people attacking, and that's reality. So how did that come to hit you guys as a unit?
Okay, well, again, now this is a fictional
Yeah, I
part of
know.
the book, but it's somewhat based on fact. Although the Marines actually were not, well, not the Marines that I knew were involved, but some MP Marines were involved. And what happened was there was a what they call ARVN. That was the Army of the Republic of Vietnam. They were our allies, and they had a big compound near us, and that was attacked. And so in the book, what I've got is what we call the quick reaction force from Camp Horn being hauled onto trucks and with ammo and rifles and being driven down there to protect this ARVN compound. So this actually did happen to someone I knew, but he was in the Army, and he was in what they call the First Military Intelligence Battalion, and he was an officer who was a photo interpreter. And during that battle, he and his other troops had to run to the wall of this compound with their flak jackets and their helmets and their rifles and everything in anticipation of being attacked. It didn't happen, but nevertheless, he was so close to it that he still remarks upon it. Here I was ready. I thought I was going to be doing interpretation of photos, and here I am along the wall with all my buddies waiting for the enemy to try and come over the wall. Um, Unfortunately, in that same incident, though, the Marines did lose a couple of MPs. One was an officer, and one was a enlisted man. When they were trying to help the South Vietnamese allies defend against this horrific attack during the Tet Offensive.
Yeah, it's quite a scene, and it's quite dramatic the way uh, you wrote it. And a good fiction is always based upon some levels of reality. And we have a winner for the second question. And Susan,
We do have a winner for the second question, and it's the great and wonderful Nancy Campbell Gorski, who came in with the correct answer that the reason why $10 million of helicopter were pushed off the Midway was to make room for evacuees, for all the people that needed to come on board.
she's correct.
Yeah.
And Nancy is one of my trivia partners here at Heritage Shores. So she is a tremendous trivia player.
She is. She's very good at this
Congratulations.
game. Congratulations, Nancy. Thank you so much for playing and for watching.
It will give the now, one of the things you commented on the book is there is kind of a friendly rivalry between the no, what wasn't your comment? It was a comment I received when I was talking to a Navy person here in the community I live. He was in the photo intelligence for the Navy, and you were in the photo intelligence for the Marines, and you covered different areas. Was there a friendly rivalry between the two groups, at best you know it? And
Well, two things, Ralph.
Yep.
I didn't know that the Navy had photo intelligence operators during the Vietnam War. I never ran into one. They may have, but as far as I knew, there were two schools for aerial photo interpretation in the military. One was the Army School in Fort Holabird, Maryland, and the other was the Air Force School at Lowry Air Force Base near Colorado, in Colorado. But as far as a naval aerial, I never knew of it, so I really can't comment on it.
Okay, what we'll do is he's had a book published, and it's a little more um, uh, nonfiction. So when he's on as a guest, we're gonna ask you to pipe in and chat about the two and see how we line up. Is that okay?
I love to deal with squids. That's a direct.
To my Navy friends out there watching the show, this is all in good fun. So something else. You had a list of characters, and they're all terrific in their own right. But one of them, and again, it gets to the point of what the heck is he thinking? He falls in love with a local Vietnam woman who's also got linkage to the Viet Cong. So, uh, tell us about that and how that story evolved.
Okay, but it's purely fictional. Okay, but
Okay, that's fine.
again, I told you earlier that I was on mess duty, and we had this honcho woman who governed the young ladies who worked in the mess hall, and we used to sit sometimes after meals and have a cigarette with her and some of the cooks and a cup of coffee, and she was a delightful person, and so I conjured up a romantic relationship based upon this woman. Okay, and it could have easily happened. Don't forget, a lot of the American servicemen, they had relationships up and down, up and down the country, Army, Navy, Air Force, whatever. With Vietnamese women, there were a number of mixed race children, of course, and some of them brought them home, and some of them abandoned them, unfortunately. So I tried to think of what would happen if this fellow, who was a racist, actually, he was a Southern-born racist. If he fell in love with an indigenous woman over there, and he was consumed by, and I say it in the book, something called le jaune. Let's see, le mal jaune, the yellow sickness, and that's throughout Asia. All these troops came over and they fell in love with Asians, and this guy was susceptible to that disease. I'll call it. Okay, and so he's in love with this woman. He actually goes on AWOL to be with her, and he pays the price for it. But I know guys, who used to hop the fence, not so much because they had a love interest, but they had a. I'm trying to think of a good way to put this, Ralph. But they had an interest in sexual release. Let's put it that way. Okay. Um, and they would come back. They hop the fence and they hop the fence back, but there weren't really any romantic relationships I knew of except for the one that I conjured up.
Well, it was a good conjure. I have to hand it to you. It was very
Well, thank
good.
you.
And we'll ask the third trivia question at this point and see who's really on their toes. So, from America's point of original official involvement, how long did the Vietnam War last? So, again, what was the official length of the war? And we'll take the closest guess in years and months within the next couple of minutes. So, what was the official length of the war? And there was an incident that marked the official length, and we'll use that as a clue for people to follow. So, tell me about some of the antics that you came up with, like the one that the flight attendants had to use, and how you managed to conjure up that. and then
Well,
the
again,
subsequent events that
you know,
followed.
all right. Well, I'll inform your reader, your listeners, as we go along. But this was also based upon things that happened, actual activities that happened in Vietnam. Don't forget, boys will be boys, okay?
Yeah,
And what would happen is, at the air base, it's a little bit different. But I will tell you, and I'll get to that in a second. But at some other camps around me, guys would send home to their wives and girlfriends and say, "Send me a piece of your underwear." Prefer, Preferably the bottom part, okay? And they would take those and they would have what they call either E clubs, which are for enlisted people, or senior non commissioned officer clubs, or even officer clubs. And they would take those undergarments and they would tack them on the walls. And eventually, the whole plywood walls would be just smothered with these undergarments, okay? And
panties.
so I know that was true, okay, and so I used that kind of a background to initiate a raid on one of these clubs at the main Air Force, the Dang Air Force Base, and I had my characters who were all aerial photo interpreters imitate being officers and military police in order to raid this place and then capture all the panties. Okay, to be perfectly honest about it, and that was their objective, and it's a silly objective, but it was carried out. And there were consequences, but nevertheless, again, it's based on stuff that happened there, but I just carried it to an extreme.
It does. It's great reading, and it's fun port. It's a fun part of the book, and as the book moves along, there's a wow moment. When you go like, "Holy crap!" And that wow moment came, I think, when one of the aerial photographs uncovered that there were Russian tanks close. Um, so I don't know if it might fiction based on fact or it was fact, but describe what everybody went through when that happened, at least as it relates to your characters in the book.
Now, are we talking about the appearance of a tank?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. Again, now that was based on something that happened there also. And it happened around the time of the Tet Offensive, where there was a lot of people know about the Caisson Siege, the Siege of Caisson, which was in the north, north, let's see, west corner of South Vietnam. And just south of Caisson was an army base called Lang Vay. And Lang Vay was populated only by special forces troops who would sneak across into Cambodia and try and find out what was happening on this trail that came down from North Vietnam, where all the supplies were arriving. And during during that whole period, all of a sudden, from out of the woods come these amphibious Soviet tanks called PT-76s. They were light tanks, and they attacked this village called Lang Vay. And again, the only people there were the Green Berets, and they wanted the Marines to come down from Caisson and rescue them. But the Marine commander said, that is an invitation for slaughter. They will ambush us all the way down and all the way back. We're not doing it. You got to get out by yourself. And the Army always took that very resentfully, okay? Um, but the tank, actually, I know a fellow Marine who I went to boot camp with, and he was at Lang Vay at that time, and he was a radio man, and he talked to he was a caisson. He talked to an officer who was in a bunker at Lang Vay, and he said this was the calmest guy I ever talked to. He told me that a PT-76 was on top of his bunker doing pirouettes, trying to crush it. and I don't know what happened to that officer, but he said he was the coolest guy I ever talked to. So again, this was based on something that actually happened. Okay, so yeah.
Yeah. It's again, it's a good part, and it certainly brought to reality the fact that the enemy was closing in.
Plus, Ralph,
You
they were using armor at that time. That was the first time they used armor. That was key.
right, right.
All right.
So you have incredible amount of detail in all of the scenes, and was that something you stockpiled during your time there, or um, you had to do a lot of research to get all that information?
I did a lot of research, Ralph. I read a lot of books. I have a library on Vietnam, to be honest with you. Okay, and but one thing I did not do when I was writing the book is I never read fiction. I didn't want to be influenced by any of the current fiction having to do with Vietnam because I didn't want people to say, "Hey, you're ripping this guy off." Okay,
Right.
this and so I stayed away from that purposely, and just tried to do original writing. So yeah.
Yeah, it was great. You put the readers, you know, in the field of battle there, and in there in Vietnam with so much detail. It's really a credit to all your research. It was well done. Uh, Susan, do we have a winner on the closest guess?
Well, we have two guesses, and I apologize. I have two different answers of what it is.
Uh,
Butch Chrisman said 10 years, and Nancy Campbell Gorski said 19 years 5 months. And
well,
I'm not. And I apologize again. I have conflicting information on some of my papers here, and I'm just wondering which is the correct answer, Ralph. Maybe you could tell us.
yeah, the correct. Well, Peter could actually tell it because he knows the answer. Yeah, go ahead, Peter. Tell Butch and Nancy what the correct answer is.
Well, I modified your question a little bit in my mind, Ralph, and said, when was the official end of the American involvement and how long in Vietnam, which would have been the enactment of the Tonkin Gulf Resolution in 1984. And so from 84 to 75, when the war ended, April of 75, I came up with, now I can't remember because I know I told you, I think it
10
was
years,
eight,
9 months. 10
yeah,
years,
I
nine
think it
months.
was 10 years, 9 months. But the other answer, as far as the wider war, when the French were involved, is also doable, I think.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
I looked it online, and there's reliable sources give information kind of supporting both lengths. So
they do.
Yeah, yeah,
But
mhm.
yeah,
the answer we were looking for was the official, which was the start of the Tonkin, the Tonkin affair in the South China Sea. So
right.
we would the answer we look for is 10 years, 9 months.
Okay,
So
so Butch is the closest. So congratulations, Butch. That's your second win tonight.
good try.
Yeah.
Which is simplify again. So, well, it's good. I'm glad we're getting more people involved. So, what what insight would you share with the viewers? And again, part of this can come from your book, part of this can come from your experiences and stories. What would you like to tell viewers about our involvement in Vietnam that maybe could change some of the negativity to uh, positive feelings about the American soldiers that were there?
Well, I think that my generation had a lot of relatives, uncles and fathers who had fought either in Korea or in World War II, and they wanted to do their duty just like their fathers and uncles had done. Okay, except the objectives in those two wars were a lot clearer than what was going to happen in Vietnam. And I think that uh, the officials in Washington, and I'm thinking of Lyndon Johnson. I'm thinking of geez, trying to think of McNamara, the Secretary of Defense. They were lying to the American people, unfortunately, and as a result of that, um, people were very skeptical when they found out about this. Don't forget there was the publication of the Pentagon Papers by the New York Times, which showed how we all got into Vietnam and all the lies that were told along the way, and the kind of the hopelessness of the South Vietnamese government, because that was in turmoil at all times, and we didn't have an ally that we could really support. Plus, the Russians treated this as kind of a proxy war, and they supplied the North Vietnamese with surface-to-air missiles, the tanks, and everything else. And it did them okay because they were trying to show that America was not that strong, that it didn't win all wars, and that there was something to say about communism and how communism worked. Um, but my final answer, I guess, is this was a proxy war. Never should have happened. And also, again, it was the only war up until that time that the U.S. lost.
Yeah, it's quite a different experience, and I know the folks that came through it, and friends that I had that went to Vietnam, and friends I had that went to Vietnam and didn't come back, which is even more, uh, sad. Their lives cut short at the age of 18 and a half or 19. Um, and you wonder what it was for, even back then. And it's just a sad situation. But I tell you, uh, I have to give a lot of credit to the folks that served there. They are soldiers, and they had to carry out for our country, and they did the best they possibly could. And I want to
And
thank
plus, many of
everybody.
them, Ralph,
Yeah, go ahead.
many of them were draftees. They didn't volunteer. They were draftees. I think I mentioned to you offline a couple of days ago that many of them came from the inner city and from farms that really had these honest people who were willing to do the job, but again were drafted to serve in this war and didn't volunteer. And again, because of what was happening in Washington D.C. with all the lies that were being told, tremendous amount of lives were lost. And we have the Vietnam War Memorial down in D.C. that shows 58,000 people, American kids, lost their lives there. It was a shame.
Yeah, it was absolutely. Final question: what's next for Peter Smith? Is there another book in the offing?
Actually, Ralph, I'm working on something now. A lot of authors don't like to talk about what they're working on because it kind of jinxes them. But I'm working on something that's nonfiction, and I should have it done, I don't know, within a year or so, I think, and we'll see if we can't get that published too.
Good. I lied to the audience. I have one more question. The title of the book, "Somebody's Catching Hell." What's the genesis of that?
Okay, during the novel, just leading up to the Tet Offensive, there's this character, a senior not a senior enlisted man. I think he's a what is he? They call him Top, but he's about as high as you can go as an enlisted man, and he's been in the Marine Corps for about almost 3 decades, including World War II, Korea, some other places, and he is standing on a kind of a balcony talking to a very junior guy, and they see a firefight in the distance, and the junior guy turns to him and says, "What do you think is going on there, Top?" And he turns to him and says, "Somebody's catching hell." And it was a fight between Viet Cong and the Americans.
Well, it's a good term. Well, thank you for coming on. I think it's a terrific read. It's as you said, part fiction, part nonfiction, but it's well done. It will put the readers inside the photo intelligence op group and go through the trials and tribulations that they went through in a very realistic manner. So thank you for coming on. I look forward to the next book. And when we get the Navy guy on in early next year, we'll be sure we send you the link and pipe you in. and we can ask some
Thank you for
questions.
having me as a guest.
Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Peter. It was a joy to have you as a guest. And Ralph, always a pleasure to have you on. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
All right. In
Okay.
2 weeks, we have another feisty topic that was a firefight from the start, and that's Bill Lure's a wonderful, again, it's historical fiction, about the 1924 Democratic Convention in New York City. And I tell you, that's another one I'm looking forward to having a conversation with. It will be enjoyable.
That sure will be almost 100 years ago, which is kind of crazy to think about. So,
Yeah,
anyway, thank you
absolutely.
both, gentlemen. You guys enjoy your evening, and that is going to wrap us up tonight for Reading, Writing, and Ralph on ZTV. But tomorrow night we have a wonderful show, and I just happen to have our host tomorrow night to tell you a little bit about it.
Hi everyone, I'm Alexandra, and tomorrow I'm going to be hosting a ZTV episode live at 7 per usual with Robin and Vaughn Ambrose, who have started the Yellow Door concert series in Alexandria. And so they're going to play some live music for us, and we're going to learn about the concert series and all that they've been doing with it. So join us tomorrow.
Excellent. Thank you, Alexandra. Looking forward to that tomorrow night. Another wonderful show on ZTV Live. If you have stories that you'd like to see come on ZTV Live, let us know. Drop us a line on our Facebook by private message, or you can always email us at editor@thezebrapress.com. So until then, everybody have a wonderful evening. Hope to see you right back here tomorrow night. And until then, remember to be the good news in someone's life.